Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Today I will begin by answering a question that was sent by email. The question is, that is what was written. I used to think that the who am I question, which has no answer, since one cannot know the self, was a way to fall into a deeper reality. More recently, I feel that the I in the question is your false ego little I. To get a sense of it and then stay with it and not let yourself be pulled towards the objects of its focus so that it dissolves, as it were, and then the self can shine through. Also, I can't get a clear sense of that ego I-ness to which I can hold on. So I don't really know what to do. There are several things here that need clarifying. So I'll just go through bit by through the email bit by bit. That is, it starts with, I used to think that the question, who am I, which has no answer. At the level of a question, who am I obviously does have an answer. That is the level, the question, who am I, we can answer in a negative way by saying what we are not, or in a positive way by saying what we are. In a negative way, we can say, but what we are is not this body or mind or any of the five sheaths, or any object or phenomena is not ourselves. What we are is just awareness. So this we can give such an answer. Bhagavan has clearly given such answers. But though we answer the question in this way, that doesn't change our experience. We may understand conceptually that we are not this body or mind, but we nevertheless experience ourselves as if we were this body and mind. So there's obviously more to Bhagavan's teachings than simply asking a question and getting an answer. Obviously, we start off with the question, but we shouldn't stop with the question. What Bhagavan asked us is not to ask the question, who am I, but to investigate who am I. As I say, if we ask the question, we can get a conceptual answer, but that answer is not going to solve our problems because we still experience ourselves as if we're this body. But the investigation, who am I, the answer, if at all we want to call it an answer, there's not really an answer to investigation, but what the investigation leads to is awareness of ourselves as we actually are. That is the aim. That's why Bhagavan called it Nana Ennum Vicharane. That is the investigation, who am I. He never said ask who am I or question who am I. He said investigate who am I. Of course, we ask who am I when we are trying to understand the basic principles of the teachings. That is, if we don't have a clear conceptual understanding of what we are, if we begin to investigate what we are, we'll be investigating something other than ourselves. If we take ourselves to be the body, then Atma-vichara, self-investigation, would mean investigating the body. If we take ourselves to be the mind, then you'd be investigating the mind. So it is not investigating any of the five sheaths. It's investigating the I that is aware of itself as I am this body consisting of five sheaths. And investigating, what does self-investigation mean? Bhagavan has clearly defined Atma-vichara in the 16th paragraph of Nana. He says, Sadakalamum manate atma-vil vetiribhkutan Atma-vichara mentrupaya. That literally means the name Atma-vichara is only for always keeping the mind on oneself, or putting the mind on oneself. So in other words, Atma-vichara is putting our mind or keeping our mind on ourselves. Keeping our mind on ourselves means keeping our attention on ourselves. So simply attending to ourselves. That's how we investigate what we are. That is, if we want to know what something is, we have to look at it very carefully, have very close attention to it. Then only we can know what it is. So if we want to know what this I is, we have to attend to this I. In other words, we have to attend to ourselves. And then the question goes on, since one cannot know the self, there's no such thing as the self other than ourself, and we always know ourself. There is never a moment when we do not know I am. The problem is, though we know that we are, but we don't know what we are. The reason we don't know what we are is because we know ourselves as something other than what we actually are. What we actually are is Satchit, pure being awareness, which is what shines as I am. But we are not aware of ourselves as just I am. That is, when we rise as ego, we're not aware of ourselves as just I am. We're aware of ourselves as I am this body. But even when we're aware of ourselves as I am this body, we don't cease to be aware I am. But the problem is there's adjunct conflated with this I am. Adjunct means upadi. Upadi means one thing, but is mistaken to be another thing. That is a secondary thing that the primary thing is mistaken to be. So the primary thing is I am. I am is mistaken to be this body. So it's because of this mistaken identification that though we're always aware of ourselves, we're not aware of ourselves as we actually are. So it's wrong to think that we cannot know ourselves. It is true to say we cannot know ourselves as an object, but as Bhagavan clarified, we know ourselves just by being ourselves. But so long as we rise as ego, we know ourselves as something other than what we actually are. To know ourselves as we actually are, we need to be as we actually are. And to be as we actually are, we need to cease rising as ego. And the means by which we can cease rising as ego is to attend to ourselves. So attending to ourselves is the means to be ourselves, to be what we actually are. And that being what we actually are is knowing ourselves as we actually are. And then she said, so that the whole sentence is, I used to think that who am I question, which has no answer since one cannot know the self, was a way to fall into the deeper reality. Merely asking the question is not going to take us to a deeper reality. We need to investigate who am I? In other words, we need to investigate what we actually are. That alone will enable us to subside back into our own being, which is the reality of ourselves, what we actually are. So that's the first sentence. Then she goes on to say, more recently, I feel that the I in the question is your false ego little I. Yes, that's true in a sense, but actually, there's only one I. Now we experience this one I as ego, because that is what we actually are. The pure I is that which is aware of itself as just I am, not I am this or I am that. Or sometimes Bhagavan expresses it by saying, what we actually are is aware of itself as I am I. In other words, it's aware of itself as itself, and nothing other than itself. But as ego, we're aware of ourselves as I am this body. These are not two different I's. It's the same I. What we actually are is that same I in its pure form, without any adjuncts. Whereas when that same pure I is conflated with adjuncts, as I am this body, that is ego. So since there are no two I's, all we are to investigate is I. Whether we think of that I as ego or as our being really doesn't matter, because there's only one I. If you if you see a rope and mistake it to be a snake, Bhagavan will tell you, no, it's a rope. But you'll still be afraid of it because to you it still looks like a snake. So if you ask Bhagavan, so Bhagavan will then say to you, look at it carefully. If you look at it carefully, you'll see it's just a snake. If you then ask Bhagavan, which it should I look at? Should I look at the snake or at the rope? What will he say? He'll obviously say, look at the snake, because in your view, it seems to be a snake. But if you look at the snake carefully, what do you see? It's just a rope. Likewise, whether we think the I we're attending to is ego or our being, it's the same I. If we look at ego carefully enough, what we will see is its underlying reality, which is our own being. So there's no need before when we're investigating ourselves to label the I that we're investigating as ego or the pure I. There's only one I. Attend to this one I. If we think of it in terms of ego, even then, what we are investigating, that is, ego is a conflation of the pure I and adjuncts. What we're investigating is the I portion, not the adjunct portion. So it's the same whatever way we think of it. And then she goes on to say, to get a sense of it and then stay with it and not let yourself be pulled away towards the objects of its focus so that it dissolves, as it were, and then the self can shine through. Yes, this is true in a sense. That is, to get a sense of it means we always have a sense of it. That is, we are always aware, I am. But as ego, we're aware of ourselves as I am this body. But even when we're aware of ourselves as I am this body, we're still aware I am. So we don't need to get a sense of it. We already have a sense of it. We're already clearly aware I am. So all we need to do is to stay with that I am. That is, we need to fix our attention, fix our mind on this fundamental awareness I am, and just stay with that. Stay with that means not let go of it, not allow our attention to be diverted away towards other things. Or as she put it, not let yourself be pulled towards the objects of its focus. That is the natural tendency of ego. The natural inclination of ego is to always attend to things other than itself, that is, to objects. But we need to attend only to the subject. That is that to which all objects appear, that is the subject or ego. That is what we need to attend to. If we attend to that, it will thereby subside and dissolve back into its source. So she says, so that it dissolves as it were. It's not even as it were, it does dissolve. If we attend to ourselves, that is, to the extent to which we attend to ourselves, to that extent do we as ego subside. And to the extent to which we subside, we will thereby dissolve. So if we attend to ourselves so keenly that we cease to be aware of anything other than ourselves, we will subside completely and dissolve it back into the source from which we rose. The source from which we rose is the pure awareness I am. And then the self can shine through. That is, the self is not some other thing that shines through. That is, when this adjunct conflated awareness, I am this body, dissolves, what remains is what was always there, namely that pure awareness I am. So what happens is the adjunct drops off and the pure awareness I am alone remains. So we can say it of the self shine through, but it's better to understand that when we, to the extent to which we attend to ourselves and thereby become aware of ourselves as we actually are, the adjuncts drop off. And when we attend to ourselves so keenly that we cease to be aware of ourselves, of anything other than ourselves, we thereby experience ourselves as pure awareness, which is what we actually are. So then we remain as pure awareness, and ego dissolves completely and forever. So that pure awareness is what the question is referring to as the self. But as I say, that this term the self is a bit misleading because it makes it sound like something other than ourself. There is no self other than ourself. So it's what we actually are. And that alone will remain when the adjuncts drop off. The adjuncts drop off, and the dissolution of ego are one and the same thing. Because ego is ego only so long as it's mixed and conflated with adjuncts. When the adjuncts drop off, the pure awareness I am remains. Ego is removed from the picture. And finally, she says, also, I can't get a clear sense of that ego I-ness to which I can hold on. So I don't really know what to do. That is, we all have a clear sense. We all have a clear awareness, I am. Before we can know any other thing, we must know I am. And whatever else we may be aware of, who is aware of it? I am aware of it. So I am is the, as Bhagavan often used to compare it to the screen on a cinema, in the cinema, whether pictures are projected on the screen or not, the screen is always present. Likewise, whether in waking and dream, there's a picture of this this body and world and mind-body world and all these things appear on the screen. In waking and dream, that is. In sleep, nothing appears. There's just the screen alone remains. The screen is I am. So whether we're aware of other things or not, we're always aware I am. So we all have a clear sense of it. But if we think we don't have a clear sense of it, then we haven't understood the teachings clearly enough. We need to pay close attention to what Bhagavan says. We need to think about it carefully, understand what he says. All he's asking us to attend to is to ourselves. That is to this fundamental awareness I am, which is something that is ever existing and shining. That is what we actually are. So there is never a moment when we are not aware of ourselves. All we need to do is to attend to ourselves. That is, attend to our own being, this fundamental awareness I am. There's nothing else to do. So when she says, I don't really know what to do, all we need, firstly, we need to understand what we are and what we are not. That's where the question comes in. That's just a preliminary. That is, we need to consider the question, who am I, in order to understand that we are not what we seem to be. We're not this body or mind or any of these five sheaths. What we are is just this fundamental awareness I am. Once we've understood that, then we can begin investigating ourselves. And investigating ourselves means just attending to ourselves as this fundamental awareness I am. In other words, just attending to I am, not to anything else. So there's never a moment when we do not have a clear sense of this. We're always clearly aware I am. So attending to that is all we need to do. That is, though we are always aware I am, generally we're more interested in other things. So we allow our attention to be diverted away from ourselves towards other things. So even when we're aware of other things, we're still aware I am, but we are negligently aware I am. This is what is called pramada, self-negligence. We are not, or sometimes Bhagavan referred to it as avichara, non-investigation. In other words, we're not, though we're aware I am, we're not attending to I am, because we're allowing all our interest, we're too interested in other things, so we attend to other things. So we simply need to withdraw our attention from all other things and just try to focus it on our own being, on I am, which is what we actually are. So the practice is very, very simple, but we need to understand Bhagavan's teachings clearly and correctly in order to understand what he teaches us about the practice. Because if we don't understand what he teaches us, we won't understand the practice that is implicit in all his teachings. That is, all his teachings ultimately are pointing at one thing and one thing alone, this simple practice of self-attentiveness. Because without attending to ourselves, we cannot know what we actually are. So in order to know what we actually are, all we need to do is to attend to ourselves. When we attend to ourselves, we as ego will subside and dissolve, and what will then remain is ourself as we actually are, the pure awareness I am. So I hope this is an adequate answer to this question. There's one other question that was asked in a YouTube comment today, which is a question about an explanation that I've often given and that I've just given. That is, the question that is asked is, if the source of ego is our fundamental awareness I am, our own being, and if Bhagavan calls ego the formless demon, how can a demon be associated with our fundamental awareness as its source? Where am I getting confused here? Thanks. That is, our source is the fundamental awareness I am. I am is not only the source of ego, it is also the substance of ego. The substance of ego means what ego actually is. But ego is a demon because it rises as I am this body. In other words, it identifies itself with something other than what it actually is. That is why it is a demon, because by mistaking itself to be something other than what it actually is, it deludes itself. When I say itself, we're referring to us. That is what ego is not something other than us. Ego is what we now seem to be. Because we are now aware of ourselves, I am this body, I am this person, we are thereby not aware of ourselves as we actually are. So this ego is a demon. So the reality of this demon is the pure awareness I am. Bhagavan refers to ego as a demon, as a pei. A pei means evil spirit that possesses. That pei is a Tamil equivalent of a Sanskrit word pisasa. That's a class of demon who are notorious for possessing people. So like a person, like a demon who possesses a person, this ego has possessed us, so to speak. That's why he calls it a demon. But when he says it is formless, we need to understand what he means. It is formless because it has no form of its own. Since it has no form of its own, it's got no separate existence. So ego seems to have a separate existence only when it grasps the form of a body as I. That's why the verse in which Bhagavan refers to ego as a formless demon, as Uruvatrape, is verse 25 of Uludunapadu. It's in the last line of that verse that he gives this description, Uruvatrapeya Hande, the formless phantom ego. But what he says from the beginning of that verse is, Urupatri undam, grasping form, it comes into existence. That is, without grasping form, it has no separate existence. So there's no such thing as ego until it grasps form. So when he says grasping form, it comes into existence, that means as soon as we rise as ego, we grasp the form of a body as ourself. But this body doesn't exist independent of ego. So the implication is when Bhagavan says grasping form, it comes into existence, as soon as we rise as ego, we project a body, which we experience as I, and then we project this world and everything else. So the first grasping is grasping a body. And the very nature of ego is to constantly grasp, as Bhagavan says, grasping form. Form here means means a phenomenon of any kind whatsoever. So the first form we grasp is the form of a body. And body, Bhagavan doesn't mean just the physical form of the body. He says, as he says in verse 5 of Ulunaptu, Uru Panchakosa Uru. The body is a form of 5 sheaths. Therefore, all 5 are included in the term body. So when he talks about body, he's referring to all the 5 sheaths. That is the physical form of the body, the Annamaya Kosha, as it's called, the life that animates that body, the Pranamaya Kosha, and the mind, intellect, and will that function within that body. These 5, it's what we collectively experience as I whenever we rise as ego. So the first thing we grasp is this body consisting of 5 forms, this body consisting of 5 sheaths. And we cannot stand or endure as ego for a moment without constantly grasping this body as I. So in the first sentence, he says, Urupatri undam, grasping form, it comes into existence. In the second sentence, he says, grasping form, it stands. That means it endures by continuing to grasp the form of a body as I. And having grasped the form of a body as I, the ego is then constantly feeding on other forms, as he implies in the third sentence, in which he says, Urupatri undu mika ongam. That means grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes abundantly. It grows. It grows big. It grows abundantly. That means it flourishes. So the food on which ego lives is forms. Forms means things other than itself. So how does it grasp them? It grasps them by attending to them. So throughout the waking and dream state, we are constantly attending to things other than ourselves. That's how this formless demon seems to have a form, because it grasps the form of the body as I, and then constantly feeds on other forms. Then he says, Uru Vittu Urupatram, leaving form, it grasps form. But why? Because ego cannot for a moment stand without grasping form. So leaving form, it grasps form can be understood in 2 ways, and both are correct. That is, it means we are constantly attending to things other than ourselves. So if we let go of one thing, we jump onto another thing. That's one sense. In a deeper sense, if we leave one body, we grasp another body. For example, when we wake up from a dream, we leave the dream body and we grasp this waking body. When we fall asleep, and when from the waking state we drift off into dream, we leave this waking body and grasp a dream body. Likewise, at the time of death, when we are forcibly separated from this body, either due to disease or old age or accident or whatever, once the body becomes unfit to continue living, we leave this body and we grasp another body. Because ego cannot stand without constantly grasping. Well, first it needs to grasp the body as I, and then it needs to be constantly grasping other things. So grasping form is the very nature of ego. This is why Bhagavan refers to ego as a demon. Though it is formless, it has this demonic nature of constantly grasping form, identifying itself as I am this body, and consequently knowing other things. But what is the reality of ego? That is, as Bhagavan often explained, ego is the false awareness, I am this body. The false awareness, I am this body, means it is that which is aware of itself as I am this body. So in this adjunct conflated awareness, I am this body, what is real is I am. What is unreal, the adjunct, is this body. So that's why I said the fundamental awareness I am is both the source from which ego rises and the substance of ego. It's both the source and the substance. The substance means it's what ego actually is. If we remove all adjuncts by holding on to our being, what remains is our being. That is the reality of ego. That is why when we investigate ourselves, when we investigate ourselves, we are trying to hold on to our own being, to what we actually are. To the extent to which we hold on to our being, we thereby let go of other things. So if we hold on to our being firmly enough, the adjuncts will drop off, because the adjuncts are not holding us. We are holding the adjuncts. So if instead of holding the adjuncts, if we try to hold our own being, we try to hold on to I am, the adjuncts will drop off and the pure I am alone will remain. So if we understand it correctly, it's not at all confusing. That is, there's one fundamental reality, I am. This ego is the same I am, mixed and conflated with adjuncts. And that is the source of all trouble. Because all troubles are things other than ourselves that seem to come and affect ourselves. Troubles affect us only when we rise as ego. In sleep, in deep dreamless sleep, we are not affected by any problem or any trouble whatsoever. But as soon as we begin to, as we wake up or begin to dream, we face so many troubles. So the root trouble, the first problem is our rising as ego. And that ego is nothing but a false awareness of ourself. Awareness of ourself as I am this body, instead of just I am. So in order to destroy ego, since ego is a false awareness of ourself, it can be destroyed only by correct awareness of ourself. Correct awareness of ourself means awareness of ourself as we actually are. In order to be aware of ourself as we actually are, what do we need to do? We need to just attend to ourselves. If we attend to ourselves, we as ego thereby subside and dissolve back into our being, and our being alone remains. So I hope that adequately answered that question also. Are there any, have any questions come in, Shalini?
Yeah, Michael. The first question is, please could you talk on the idea, I am the body, which is strong in the transient dream world. Taking care of the body in the dream seems wise. Thank you.
Yeah, that is this aware. This body is not what we actually are, but whenever we rise as ego, we're aware of ourselves as I am this body. And so long as we continue clinging to ourselves as I am this body, it seems to be necessary for us to take care of this body. It's actually not necessary, because this body is being taken care of by prarabdha. Prarabdha means prarabdha is the fruit of our past actions, but have been given to us to experience in this lifetime. So how this body is to be taken care of is already predetermined by Bhagavan. So we don't actually have any need to take care of this body at all. All we need to do is to hold on to I am. But because we are not holding on to I am, this body seems to be ourself, and therefore it seems to us that we need to take care of this body. That is not actually necessary, because how this body is to be taken care of, how many years, months, weeks, days, hours, minutes this body is to live, and how it is to live is already predetermined. So whether we think we are taking care of the body or not, the body will be taken care of for as long as it's meant to be taken care of, and then one day it will go. So we really don't have to take care of this body. But because we identify this body as I, it seems to us that we are taking care of this body. When we're hungry, we eat food. When we're sick, we take medicine. But actually, all the food and the medicine and the clothing and the shelter and everything else is all provided by prarabdha. we are not actually, we need not do anything. We seem to be doing all these things because we have risen as ego and identify ourselves with the mind, speech, and body. So since we're aware of ourselves as I am this body, any actions done by the body seem to us to be actions done by us. I am sitting, I am standing, I am walking, whatever. Likewise with the speech, when the body is speaking, we're aware of it as I am speaking, I am talking. And likewise with all the activities of the mind, I am thinking, I am perceiving, I am remembering, I'm judging, discriminating, reasoning, liking, disliking, desiring. All these are all functions of the five sheaths. These seem to be actions done by us so long as we identify ourselves as I am this body consisting of five sheaths. If we're aware of ourselves as we actually are, we will know that nothing is done by us, because what we are is just pure being. Doing is the nature of ego. Being is our real nature. So we need not be concerned about the body, because the body will be taken care of by prarabdha. However, though we tell ourselves this, we need not be concerned about the body, because we're not yet willing to let go of this false identification, I am this body. It seems to us to be necessary that we have to take care of this body. I have to eat, I have to take medicines, I have to wear warm clothing in cold weather, I need to wear light clothing in hot weather, I need to have a shelter over my head to protect me from the sun and the rain and the storms and the cold and all these things. All these things seem to be necessary because we identify ourselves as this body. If we hold on to our own being and thereby let go of this body, everything will be taken care of in accordance with prarabdha. But if we're really holding on to ourselves, we won't even be aware of this. Whether it happens or doesn't happen is no concern of ours, because all we're concerned about is our own being, I am. I hope that's an adequate answer to that question.
Thank you.
Okay.
The next question is, when Bhagavan says, hold on to the I or I thought, what does he mean? Can you elaborate on this, please? That's the first question. And then there's one more question.
Okay. We all know I. What Bhagavan means by I thought is ego. That is when this I is mixed and conflated with adjuncts, as I am this body, that is ego, or the thought called I. But even when in self-investigation is holding on to I, it's not holding on to the adjuncts that we mistake ourselves to be, it's holding on to just the I. So whether we think of it as holding on to ourselves as we actually are, holding on to, it doesn't matter, so long as we're holding on to I. Holding on to means, how can we hold on to? We hold things in our attention. So if we are attending to things other than ourselves, that's what Bhagavan calls grasping form. If we attend only to our own being, that is holding on to ourself. So attention is the key.
And the second question is, should one practice self-investigation no matter what is happening in one's life? Problems or challenges come up for the individual from time to time, requiring some attention. Is it about balance? At the same time, I recognize it is life problems that can stir the individual, so it wants to turn within and take refuge in the self. Did Bhagavan design it in this way, suffering to help us withdraw from the world?
Yes, suffering does help. Well, suffering isn't guaranteed to help us. If we are wise, if we use our discrimination, whatever suffering we face should remind us this suffering, whatever suffering is there, it's a fleeting appearance. It is not ourself. So to whom does all this suffering appear? It appears to me. So hold on to that me. And the answer to the first question, should we always be attending to ourselves? Yes. That is Bhagavan, when he defined what self-investigation is, he defined it as sadakalamum atma manate atma-vichara. That is keeping the mind on oneself. Sadhakalma means always keeping the mind on oneself. So our aim is to be self-attentive always. In practice, most of us are not self-attentive always because we have so much interest in other things. Regarding the question about balance, there's no need to balance anything with self-attentiveness. Because everything else is happening in accordance with prarabdha. That means in accordance with Bhagavan's will. So there's no need for us to attend to anything. Because we're identified with this body and mind, it seems to us to be necessary. Oh, I have to attend to this. I have to pay the bills. I have to earn the money. I have to this and so many things we think are necessary. None of these things are necessary. The only thing that is necessary is to attend to I, because everything else is happening as it's meant to happen. So whether we attend to these things or not, everything is going to happen as it's meant to happen. So all we need to attend to is I. That is the ideal we're working towards. In practice, most of us are not able to hold on to I to the exclusion of all other things because we still have so much interest in other things, and we still are so unconvinced by these teachings. We still think it's necessary. I have to do this. I have to do that. But if we go deeper and deeper in this practice, it'll become more and more clear to us. Everything is happening as it's meant to happen. We don't have to concern ourselves with anything other than holding on to our own being constant, keeping the mind always fixed on ourselves. That's all that's necessary. I hope that's an adequate answer to that question.
The next one is, my understanding is that Sri Bhagavan gave us two paths, Gyan and Bhakti, both being in the end just one path. It is also my understanding that through Bhakti, our mind and heart gets purified, and therefore it is easier to practice Atma-vichara. Would you please give us your opinion about this and give us more details on how to practice Bhakti to Sri Bhagavan? Yes, and then it continues that yours and Bhagwan, and then it says, ultimately, what I'm asking is how to increase our love for Sri Bhagwan.
Okay. Well, to answer the last question first, how to increase our love for Bhagavan. We will love Bhagavan to the extent to which we know we know Bhagavan. That is, Bhagavan. We cannot know Bhagavan without loving him. So now we know Bhagavan as if he's some person who appeared in our life and gave us these teachings. But that is not what Bhagavan actually is. If we pay close attention to his teachings, it's very clear that he is not what he seemed to be. He seemed to be a person. That is not what he actually is. What he actually is our own being, I am. So if we want to increase our love for Bhagavan, the most effective way is to attend to our own being. In other words, to be self-attentive. Follow Bhagavan's teaching. That is the most effective way to cultivate love for Bhagavan. Regarding bhakti and jnana, two ways. Yeah, as you say, ultimately they are one and the same. It's only in the initial stages of the path of bhakti, but bhakti seems to be something other than jnana. That is, the path of jnana is the path of self-investigation. We cannot even begin to investigate ourselves without thereby surrendering ourselves. That is, to the extent to which we are self-attentive, we are thereby subsiding and therefore surrendering ourselves. So bhakti is that is jnana can never be separate from bhakti. But bhakti in the early stages can be separate from jnana, because in the early stages of the path of bhakti, we take God to be something other than ourselves, God or Guru to be something other than ourselves. And so so long as God seems to be something other than ourselves, we can practice devotion only through action. We can do actions of body, puja, actions of speech, japa, or singing stotras, or actions of mind, meditation. So these are puja, japa, and dhyana are means by which we fix our mind on God. But when we are doing these, we're not fixing our mind on God as he actually is, God as he seems to be. So we fix our mind on a name or form, whatever name or form appeals to us. If we're following Bhagavan's path, naturally we'll be drawn to Bhagavan. We take Bhagavan to be God and Guru. So we worship his form, we do japa of his name, and we meditate on his form. But this is still taking him to be something other than ourselves. This is what Bhagavan describes as anya bhava. Anya means what is other. And bhava in this context means meditation, or it can also mean attitude. For example, if we're doing puja to a name or form of Bhagavan, or any God, we have the attitude that God is something other than ourselves. And so we are worshipping that name, that form, trying to surrender ourselves. If we're doing japa of the name of God, we're still taking God to be something other than ourselves. Unless, of course, we're doing japa of I, which is with the understanding that God is what is shining in our heart as I. Likewise, in meditation, so long as we take God to be something other than ourselves, we can only meditate on him, or either on his name or on his form. But God is beyond name and form. The reality of God is beyond name and form. What he actually is pure being, which is what is shining in our heart as our fundamental awareness, I am. So in verse 8 of Upadesha Undiyar, Bhagavan says, rather than anya bhava, taking God to be something other than ourselves and meditating on him accordingly, ananya bhava, that is meditating on him as ananya. Ananya means not other. And he clarifies what he means by ananya bhava by adding a relative clause, avanahamaham, in which he is I. So when we are following the path of jnana, the path of vichara, we are attending to nothing other than ourselves, with the understanding that God or Guru, Bhagavan, is I. He is I. So with that understanding, we meditate only on I, on nothing other than I. That is ananya bhava. And in verse 8 of Upadesha Undiyar, Bhagavan says, that is anatinam uttamam. That means it's the best of all practices of bhakti. It's the best of all forms of meditation. And then he goes on in the next verse, verse 9, he says, he begins with the words bhava balatinal. That means by the strength of bhava. Bhava in this context means meditation. And that is referring to what type of meditation? The meditation he was talking about in the previous verse, namely the ananya bhava. So the ananya bhava, meditating on nothing other than I, is self-attentiveness. So what he implies by the term bhava balatinal in verse verse 9 is by the strength of our self-attentiveness. And what he says is bhava balatinal bhavanatita sabhava tu rutale undipara parabhakti tattvam undipara. That means being in satbhava, being in the state of being, by the strength of meditation, being in satbhava, which transcends bhavana, which is beyond bhavana, is the nature of supreme devotion, parabhakti tattvam. Parabhakti means supreme devotion. Tattva means that is the reality or the nature of supreme devotion. So, what does he mean by Satbhava tu irutale? Satbhava means the state of being. In other words, the state of being is our real state. That is what we actually are, is just the pure being I am. So being in that state of being, in other words, being as I am, which is bhavanatita. Bhavanatita means it is beyond bhavana. Bhavana in this context implies meditation in the form of mental activity. That is, if we're meditating on God as something other than ourselves, that is a mental activity, because our attention is going from ourselves towards that other thing. But when we meditate on nothing other than ourselves, in Ananya Bhava, that is not a mental activity, because to the extent to which we attend to ourselves, we as ego subside, and when we subside, all our mental activity subsides along with us. That there can't be mental activity without an ego who's doing that mental activity. So the self-attentiveness, whereas meditation on anything other than ourselves is a mental activity, meditation on ourselves is a cessation of mental activity. That's why by the strength of such meditation, we subside and thereby remain in Satbhava, our state of being, and that is supreme devotion. Why is it supreme devotion? Because that is a state of complete surrender. When we as ego subside and remain in the state of being, that state of being is the true nature of God and true nature of Guru. So being as that is the supreme devotion. That is giving ourselves wholly to God. So the most effective way to cultivate love for Bhagavan as he actually is to attend to him as he actually is, which is shining in our heart as I. So that is most effective means. All these other, these puja, japa, and dhyana, these are all good, but they cannot, as Bhagavan made clear, they cannot give liberation. What they can do is they can purify the mind and show the way to liberation, as he makes clear in verse 3 of Upadeshundya, in which he says, Kartano kakam nishkarmiya karmam karate tirti aktundi para gativari kambikum undi para. That means nishkarmiya karma, that's action done without desire for any fruit. Done, why? Done kartanu kakam, done for God. That means done for the love of God. So instead of doing puja, japa, or dhyana in order to get anything from God, we do it just for the love of God, not expecting anything in return. That will purify the mind, and the purified mind will have the clarity to understand that God cannot be known by doing anything, but only by being, by subsiding and being as we actually are. So long as we're still on the stage of Anya Bhava, in Anya Bhava, we can give up everything that is, or we can at least try to give up what is mine. But only in Ananya Bhava can we give up I. And surrender, as Bhagavan, the term Bhagavan used for surrender is Atma-samapanam, that's self-surrender. The self we have to surrender, the Atman we have to surrender, doesn't mean what we actually are, that means ego. So ego has to be surrendered. we can surrender ego only by attending to ourselves, because to the extent to which we attend to ourselves, we thereby subside. So the Anya Bhava is the preliminary stages of the path of bhakti. The path of bhakti, when we're still engaged in actions, that is only partial surrender. The complete surrender can be brought about only by Ananya Bhava, meditation on nothing other than ourself, meditation on nothing other than I, with the understanding that He, God, is I. I hope that answers that question adequately.
The next question is, what exactly is it to attend to ourselves? Is it just put our sensitive attention in the sensation perception of being? This immediately creates inner silence. Is it like this? If we don't grasp form, this means that attending to ourselves is attending to something without form. That's a question.
Yes. That is there's no sensation of being. That is, sensations are things other than ourselves. But being is what we actually are. We have clear awareness of being. That is, we all clearly aware I am. So that awareness I am is our being. That is what we need to attend to. And sorry, what was the last part of the question, Shalini? Or it's something about
If we don't grasp form, this means that attending to ourselves is attending to something without form?
Yes, that is, awareness has no form, but pure awareness I am has no form. So we are ego cannot rise, stand, or flourish without grasping form, as Bhagavan implies in verse 25 of Ulujunapadu. When we attend to ourselves, we are not attending to any form. We are attending to the awareness to which all forms appear. When we attend to that awareness, we as ego thereby subside, and we remain. When we subside back into our being. And being in this state of being, Sattva tu Tale, as Bhagavan says in verse 9 of Upadesha, that is Parabhakti Tattva, that is the supreme devotion. So all we need to do is to attend to this formless awareness I am. Though we are accustomed to constantly attending to forms, that is, phenomena of all kinds are forms of one kind or another, that is, thoughts, that perceptions, memories, thoughts, feelings, emotions, likes, dislikes, all these are different forms. So the mind, the nature of ego is to constantly grasp forms, constantly grasp things other than itself. When it tries to grasp itself, there's no form for it to grasp, because its essential being is formless. So we are just trying to hold on to our formless being. That is the formless awareness I am. Because this is not a form, by trying to grasp ourselves, we as ego thereby subside, because ego cannot rise or stand without grasping form. So when instead of grasping form, when it tries to grasp itself, as Bhagavan says in verse 25 of Ulujunapadu, Tedinal otum pidicum. Tedinal literally means if seeking. There's neither a subject nor an object explicit there, but implicit is if ego tries to seek its own reality. In other words, if we as ego seek to know who am I, if we investigate ourselves, otum pidicum, it will take flight. So ego taking flight is a metaphorical way of saying ego will subside and dissolve back into its source. So by attending to anything other than ourselves, in other words, by grasping form, by attending to any form, we thereby rise, stand, and flourish. But by attending to ourself, who are formless, we thereby subside and dissolve back into ourself, into what we actually are, our own being. Satchit, the pure being awareness, I am. I hope that was a clear answer to that question.
Yes, Michael, it was me that I
Yes.
asked that. And perhaps I want to understand a little more about this thing. This, when you say to attend to ourselves,
Yes.
this means no thought, no sense, no sensation either. So
It's not a sensation, but
not,
it's
yeah.
all sensations are things that appear to us.
Mm-hmm.
But we know our own being. Our own being is not a sensation. It's the fundamental awareness. That is, we
Yes.
can't be aware of anything else. Whatever we may be aware of, we're always aware, I am aware of this. So that I am is the fundamental awareness. All other awarenesses are superimposed on that. So we're
Okay.
trying to hold on to that fundamental awareness, I am. That is our being. That is what we actually are.
It's so subtle.
It is subtle. It is, of course, it's subtle. It's very simple, but extremely subtle. That is,
Okay.
Bhagavan's teachings are not difficult in the sense they're not, it's not conceptually, Bhagavan's teachings are extremely simple. They couldn't be simpler. But the subject he's talking about is the subtlest of all things. But though it is the subtlest, it's also the most obvious. But one thing that is more obvious than anything else is I am. Whatever else we experience could all be an illusion. But one thing that must be real is I am. Because we couldn't be aware of anything, whether real or illusory, if we didn't exist. So our own being is the one thing that is, it's the one thing that is self-evident. It is, in Sanskrit, they say swayam prakasa, it's self-shining. So that means self-evident in the most self-evident way. Other things that we say are self-evident, they're not actually self-evident, because if we weren't there, they wouldn't be self-evident. It's because of our presence that we say, oh, this is self-evident, that is self-evident. But it's evident to us. Whereas I am is evident to itself.
Okay.
That is, our own being is evident to us. There's no two things there. So it is the one thing that is absolutely certain. But though it's certain, though we all are clearly aware I am, we're constantly overlooking that because we're more interested in knowing other things.
That's true.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So it's subtle, but just because it's subtle doesn't mean it's not obvious.
Yes, when it's quite hard to hold on to that. It's quite tough.
Why it is hard. If we understand it correctly, it should be clear to us, but actually there's nothing easier than holding on to that. Why it seems to be hard is because we have such strong inclinations to attend to other things. Those inclinations to attend to things other than ourselves are what Bhagavan refers to as Vishaya Vasanas. Vasanas means inclinations in the sense of volitional tendencies, volitional inclinations. Vishaya means anything other than ourself is a Vishaya. All objects or phenomena are Vishayas. So the inclination to attend to anything other than ourselves is a Vishaya Vasana. And because our Vishaya Vasanas are strong, and our Sat Vasana, the inclination to attend to our own being, is relatively weak, it seems to us to be difficult to attend to it. But the difficulty lies in our lack of willingness. It's not difficult in itself. As Bhagavan says, it's actually the easiest of all things. But it seems difficult because of our reluctance to do it. If you're standing on the edge of a cliff, there's nothing easier than taking one step forward and falling off the cliff. But if someone asks you to do it, you know it's easy, but no, it's very difficult. Why is it difficult? Because you don't want to step off that cliff. In this path of self-investigation, when we are attending to ourselves, we are committing suicide. We're not killing the body, we're killing the I that is identified as I am this body. And only by killing that I does its underlying reality, which is what we actually are, remain shining alone.
And when we hold on to that I, the thoughts subside. Is it like this?
Yes, because no thoughts cannot arise except in our awareness. So if we don't attend to thoughts, there's no room for them to rise. So if our whole attention, that means all our awareness is focused on ourselves, there'll be no room for thoughts to arise.
Yes.
But thoughts do continue arising because our attention is not fixed on ourselves firmly enough, because we are not attending to that. That is, we are not yet willing to let go of other things. So these thoughts keep on rising. But whatever thought may arise, as Bhagavan says, if other thoughts rise, it's necessary to investigate to whom they rise. What does he mean by saying it's necessary to investigate to whom? To whom do all these things rise? They arise to us. So investigating to whom means turning our attention away from whatever appears back towards ourselves, the one to whom it appears.
Yes. What is this? What is this?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you,
Yes.
Michael.
Right.
The next question is it possible to discover the I without dying?
It's death of the body is not necessary. Death of ego is necessary because ego is a false awareness of ourself. Ego is the awareness, I am this body, I am this person. So long as we're aware of ourselves as I am this body or I am this person, it means the same. We are not aware of ourselves as we actually are. So to be aware of ourselves as we actually are, this ego needs to die. That is the price to be paid for self-knowledge. That is, ego can, as ego, we cannot know ourselves. Because when we as ego know ourselves, we cease to be ego and remain as ourselves. Ourself there means what we actually are. When what we actually are is pure awareness. When we as ego experience ourselves as pure awareness, we thereby cease to be ego, which is an impure awareness, an adjunct conflated awareness. We cease to be ego and remain as pure awareness. That is what is called the eradication of ego or annihilation of mind, manonasa. So that is the price to be paid. It's because we're not willing to pay this price, but this path seems to be difficult.
Okay. Anyway, thank you for the answer, Michael.
Yes.
You've given me.
Was
But
it an
it
adequate
looks so,
answer?
yeah, but it looks like so difficult. So how can you live without an ego as pure awareness, still do your job at work and everything?
If that is the job at work is for the person you seem to be. So long as you are aware of yourself as I am this person, I have a job, I have all these responsibilities, you are. It is only as ego that we are aware of ourselves having a job and having responsibilities. This is not real life. The life of a body is not a real life. This is just an appearance. It appears and it disappears. That is, we all know, whatever we do in this life, it's all just a passing dream. It's a fleeting appearance. And 100 years' time, we're all going to be dead. Many of us are going to be dead in 10, 20 years' time. So all this is not the real life. The real life is the life of pure awareness. And pure awareness is awareness that is not aware of anything other than itself, because it alone exists. So obviously, when we give up ego, we give up everything. That's why Bhagavan says in verse 26 of Uludunapadu, Ahande undayin anatum undahum. If ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. By everything, he means all phenomena. So our life and this job and all these things, these appear only when we rise as ego. When we're asleep, we have no job, no body, no mind, no family, no responsibilities, nothing. Only in waking and dream, all these things seem to be there because we've risen as ego. So he's, as I say, in verse 25, he says, if ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. The example for that is sleep. In sleep, we don't rise as ego, so nothing other than ourself exists. All that exists and shines in sleep is the pure awareness I am. So if ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. Hande yavamam, ego itself is everything. Therefore, Adalal yadu idu endrunadle ovadal yavamenaor. Therefore, know that investigating what this is giving up everything. Investigating what this is means investigating what ego is. If we investigate what ego is, ego thereby subsides. The ego thereby ceases to exist. And when ego ceases to exist, everything ceases to exist. So if we want to succeed in this path, we need to be willing to give up everything. The fact that we're still here means we are not yet willing to give up everything. That's why we're still here, still talking about this subject. But how then can we cultivate the willingness to give up everything, including ourselves as ego? The only way is patient and persistent practice. The more we attend to ourselves, the more love we will get to attend to ourselves, and the more indifference we will have to all other things. The inclination to attend to other things will get weaker and weaker. Is that clear?
Yes, okay, thank you very much. And I will know what to tell to my boss Monday.
You need not say anything. This is all an internal path. Let the outward life go on. So long as the body exists, the body has responsibilities. It has to earn a living. It has to support there may be wife or husband, their children, elderly parents, so many responsibilities. We have job and everything. These are all for the person we take ourselves to be. This is not for us. So in this path, we are separating ourselves from the person we mistake ourselves to be. So we need not change the life of this person. Bhagavan never recommended external renunciation. Bhagavan was not opposed to external renunciation, but he said, just like marriage comes according to destiny, this external renunciation comes according to destiny. But this has nothing to do with jnana. Jnana is the internal renunciation. In other words, the renunciation of ego, letting go of everything that we as ego are clinging to. When we let go of everything else, we thereby let go. This ego thereby dissolves and we remain as we actually are. So this is the supreme path of renunciation. not the path of external renunciation, the path of internal renunciation. So this can go on. We can be following this path, whatever the destiny of this body and mind may be.
Thank you, Michael.
Right.
Next question is a physical guru necessary alongside the practice of self-attention, as it is clearly evident that the form of Arunachala was of great devotional significance to Bhagavan? And also, if self-inquiry was all that is required, why did Bhagavan write the 5 hymns to Arunachala?
The 5 hymns are all about the practice of self-inquiry, self-investigation. If we pay close attention to what Bhagavan is talking about there, it's all about the difficulties that we confront when putting this into practice. Akshram is all about self-investigation, if we understand it correctly. The very first verse, he says, Arunachala mena ahameine pava ahatevera rupaya Arunachala. You eradicate the ego of those who meditate on you in the heart as I. So from the very start, Bhagavan is clearly indicating though he expresses it in the outwardly in the form of a love song between a young girl and her beloved Lord. That's how it's expressed outwardly. But inwardly, if we pay close attention, it's all about the beloved Lord is nothing but our own being. And we as Jiva are praying to God, who is our own being. Your first question was, is a physical guru necessary? The first thing to be understood is guru is not physical. Guru may appear in physical form in order to give us these teachings, to tell us the term within, but guru, even when guru appears in physical form, guru is not physical. So Arunachala appears in the form of a hill. It's a physical form, but Arunachala is not physical. Bhagavan says, you dance in the heart as I. There's great Arunagiri, but the shining in the heart is the killer of the soul. So there's so many indications, but what Arunachala actually is our own being. Tane tattavamidane, tane kartavai Arunachala. Oneself alone is the reality. Reveal this to me yourself. So Arunachala is nothing other than that tattva, which is ourself. So we of course, we can read our Aksharamlaya and the other hymns superficially as a stotra of an external form. But if we pay close attention to what Bhagavan is actually saying there, it's all about this internal path, this battle, this Aral Poratam, as he calls it, the warfare of grace. That warfare is grace is not a warfare going on outside. It's a warfare going on in our own heart between our the Satvasana, which is the working of grace in our heart, and all our Vishaya Vasanas, our outward going inclinations. So Arunachala Panchakam, it's a supreme, non-dualistic love song. Vedantate Vera Ravilangam Veda Poral Arunachala. Arunachala, grant me the import of the Vedas that shines in Vedanta without another, without anything other or different. In other words, that non-dual, that one that shines, that one without a second, that's what he's talking about there. I mean, it's not only Akshram, all of them. Verse 7 of Arunachala Patikam. Veli veliti ne mampala vuira, virivru buddha bodhi kangal, Velioli unne andri indru enin. If all these five elements, space, wind, fire, water, and earth, and all the many souls that are composed of these things, if all these are not other than you, the light of space, that's the space of pure awareness, Veru Yan A Ulan. Who am I? Who else am I? If all these are nothing other than you, then who else am I? Vimala, O pure one. Veliada ulatu vera vilangin. Veru ena veli varuna. That is, who is this I, who the one who rises as another? If you're shiny in the heart without another, who is this I who rises as if another? Velivara Arunachala. Arunachala, appear out, come out. That means show yourself, show your real nature. Arunachala, Avantalail, on his head, Virimalap Padattine Vete, place your vast lotus feet on his head. His head means on the head of this rising eye, but rises as if another. So this is pure non-duality. I mean, there's nothing dualistic about this at all. Though Bhagavan is, so long as our mind is going outwards, we take ourselves to be a form, as Bhagavan says in verse 4 of Uludunaptu, Uruvam Tanayin, Ulu Paramatran. If oneself is a form, the world and the supreme will be likewise. So so long as we're looking outwards, we have to, God will seem to be a form. Even if we've got an idea God is formless, and Bhagavan's written about this also in Ashtakam, even if you've got an idea that God is formless, your very idea of a formless God is itself a form. Every idea is a form. So long as we're looking outwards, we cannot know God as formless. If we want to know God as formless, we need to know ourselves, because only what is formless is infinite. There's no otherness there. So until we lose ourselves in the formless God, we cannot know God as formless. So there is he is addressing an external form, but he's repeatedly saying that what appears outwardly in the form of Arunachala is actually what's shining in the heart as I. So is a physical guru necessary? Guru is not physical. It may be necessary for guru to appear in physical form in order to give us these teachings. For example, Arunachala appeared and has always been giving these teachings in silence. But very few understand the silent teachings. So the same Arunachala appeared in the form of Bhagavan Ramana to give us these teachings in words. What Arunachala taught Bhagavan in silence, Bhagavan has translated for us in words that we can understand. In Aksharamla, he says what Arunachala taught him. Tirambiyaham dene dinamaha kankan teriyam endranayan Arunachala. Tirambiyaham means turning within. Tanne dinamaha kankan. See yourself with the inner eye. The inner eye means the eye of attention. Teriyam, it will be known. Endranayan Arunachala. Thus you said, my Arunachala. So what Bhagavan has taught us in words, Arunachala is eternally teaching in silence. It was necessary for Arunachal to appear in the form of Bhagavan only because we fail to understand those silent teachings. Because so long as our mind is going outwards, we cannot understand the silent teachings. Only when our mind turns within, turning within, see yourself with the eye, then only that silent teaching of Arunachal will be known as it is.
The next question is, in Uladu Narpadu, Anubandhanam, in verse 2, Ramana quotes Yoga Vasishta and says, Mother, by listening to preacher and not by the study of books, not by meritorious deeds, nor by any other means, can one attain that supreme state which is attainable only through association with sages and the quest for the self. When I read this, when I read this, I felt and thought, is there any hope for us without the opportunity to be in association with sages?
What if you're reading this verse, you're reading a composition of Bhagavan. You're reading Bhagavan's teachings. Reading Bhagavan's teachings is itself sadhu association. That is, Bhagavan is a sadhu. He's the embodiment of Sat. And he has given us these teachings. So sadhu association doesn't mean just being in the physical presence of a sadhu. It means that is, Bhagavan often said, better than the physical satsanga is the mental satsanga. I'll just read the meaning of this verse because it's not been the translation that you gave was not a very accurate translation. What Bhagavan says in this verse is, what exalted state one achieves here by clear vichara, which arises in the heart when one takes refuge in sadhu association, that which is extolled is not possible to achieve by a teacher or by understanding the meaning of texts or by any amount of virtuous actions or by any means. It can be achieved only by vichara, and that vichara will arise in the heart when one takes refuge in sadhu association. So if we are studying Bhagavan's teachings and trying to put his teachings into practice, that is the best sadhu association. There's a story that can illustrate this. And that is, there was an elderly couple from North India who were very devoted to Bhagavan. So after retirement, they came and they settled in Tiruvannamalai. They took a small house on rent, and every day they were coming to the ashram. At one time, some relatives of theirs from North India came to visit them. And because the relatives were visiting, the wife had to remain at home to cook for them and attend to all their needs. So those relatives were there for a few days. And after a few days, when the relatives left, she came to Bhagavan and she lamented to Bhagavan, "Oh, Bhagavan, because my relatives were here, I wasn't able to come here." She was lamenting. And Bhagavan said, "It's better that you were there, meaning in your house, and your mind was here than being here and your mind there." That means if that lady had come to Bhagavan's presence, she'd be sitting there thinking about all that she has to do to take care of her guests. But when she was there cooking for her guests and doing all the other things she needed her mind was on Bhagavan. She was regretting the fact she wasn't. So Bhagavan said, better than the implication is better than being in the physical presence, having the mind present is what's important. So that illustrates what Bhagavan said. Better than physical satsanga is mental satsanga. So mental satsanga by studying Bhagavan's teachings, that is mental satsanga. That by keeping our mind, because by this we're keeping our mind dwelling not just on Bhagavan, but on the very purpose for which Bhagavan appeared, which is to give us these teachings. But Bhagavan said the best sat means Atman. Atman, oneself alone is sat. So the best satsanga of all is Atma-sanga. In other words, self-investigation. That is the best of all satsangas. Because our mind is going outwards, we need some support. That support comes in the form of Bhagavan's teachings. So keeping our mind dwelling on Bhagavan's teachings, that is what he means by sadhuravu, sadhu association. In other words, association with a sadhu. Bhagavan is the sadhu, and his teachings, Bhagavan and his teachings are the sadhu. And so by associating with his teachings, that is what he's talking about here. And as a result of, if we take refuge in this sadhu association, this clear vichara will arrive in our heart. And only by that clear vichara can one attain that exalted state, that supreme state. I hope that is a clear answer to that question. People have a very gross idea of satsanga. They think it means something outward. Even meetings like this, people refer to as satsanga. It's satsanga only to the extent to which we are keeping our mind dwelling on Bhagavan's teachings. Satsanga is more than just a group of supposedly good people. If we are good, I'm not so sure about that. I certainly have doubts about myself. But satsanga is more than just association with good people. It means association with what is sat. Sat means what is real. And that Bhagavan's tending to Bhagavan's teachings and trying to put them into practice, that is satsanga. Because his teachings are pointing us at what is sat. What is sat is only I.
The last question, Michael.
Yes.
What is the meaning? Could you clarify the meaning of the word prarabdha?
Prarabdha is the fruit of our past actions, but we are given to experience in each life. So that is, there are three kinds of karma. Though they're called three karmas, they're actually, there's one karma, and the fruit of the karma, of the past karma, is divided into two groups. So the karma is the agamya. Agamya means those actions we do under the sway of our vasanas. In other words, under the sway of our likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, and so on. Those actions bear fruit. The fruit of actions are stored in what is called sanchita. Sanchita simply means a heap or pile. So that's the storehouse of the fruits of past actions, but we haven't yet experienced. So what determines, firstly, what's the appropriate fruit for each action, and when, where, and how we should experience that fruit, that is determined by God. So for each life, God selects the fruit of certain, that out of this vast store of unexperienced fruit, he selects those fruit that will be most conducive to our spiritual development. So everything that we are given to experience in this life is our prarabdha. And that's all predetermined. So it's, as Bhagavan said in a note to his mother in the second and third sentences, he says, Endrum naduvadadu, envichikanum naduvadu. That is, what is not to happen will not happen in spite of any amount of effort. So we are free to want we can want to experience whatever we like. We can try to experience whatever we like, but we cannot experience it unless it's in prarabdha. If it is not to happen, if it is never to happen, it will not happen. And then in the next sentence, he says, the other side of the same coin, nadapadu entade seinum niladu. What is to happen will not stop in spite of any amount of obstruction. So if a certain thing is to be experienced in prarabdha, we can want to avoid it, we can try to avoid it, but we cannot avoid it. So prarabdha determines everything that we are to experience in this life. Our will determines what we want to experience and what we try to experience. So there's no, that is, prarabdha cannot overpower our will cannot overpower our prarabdha. They're two separate domains. The domain of prarabdha is what we are to experience. The domain of will is what we want to experience and what we try to experience. But however much we want to experience something and try to experience it, we cannot experience it unless it's in prarabdha. And whatever our prarabdha may be, it cannot stop us wanting to experience something different. That is why prarabdha is usually translated in English as fate or destiny. It's what is destined, what is destined to happen in this life. So everything that we are to experience, down to the smallest thing, it's all prarabdha. That's everything that happens to us, everything that we are given to experience. People say, oh, but the efforts I make, my desires, they're also things I experience. Yes, but they're happening by us. It's what happens to us, what is given to us to experience. That is prarabdha. And that cannot be changed. And as Bhagavan said, prarabdha is another name for the will of God, because whatever is allotted to us, it's been allotted by God for our well-being. So if the correct attitude to our prarabdha, whatever happens, whether it's good or bad, it's all the will of Bhagavan. So we accept it and we remain indifferent to it. Because our aim is not to change what is, we cannot, even if we want to, we cannot change it. But of course, worldly people are constantly trying to change. That is, they don't know. They think, oh, I made this effort and I worked hard and so I've earned a lot of money. They think they've done it, but actually, however hard they work, they couldn't have earned that money if it wasn't prarabdha. So everything is happening according to prarabdha. Our own efforts, own external efforts, make no difference whatsoever. By our outwardly directed efforts, we are just accumulating more fruit to get stored in sanchita. The correct use of our freedom is not to make any effort outwardly, but to make the effort to turn within, to know who am I. And by turning within, we are thereby surrendering ourselves. So this is the law of karma. The reason why Bhagavan emphasized this law of karma is if we understand and accept this, it will make this following this spiritual path so much easier. Because we'll know whatever happens, it's all according to the will of God. We cannot change it, so we just accept it. We also become indifferent to what happens, because nothing, we can worry about things, we can try to change things. Nothing, however much we worry about things, however much we want things, nothing is going to change. The only useful effort we can make is the effort to turn within, to find out who am I. And that effort to turn within is itself surrender. I hope that was a clear answer to that question.
Could I ask you
Yes.
One follow-up question?
Yes.
When you said at the end there, if I'm sort of paraphrasing, thy will be done, not my will, that does, there's a feeling of letting go, and you said it makes everything simpler.
Exactly, exactly.
And
it's a great burden off our head. If we understand and accept this, it makes life so much easier. It's not going to, understand this is not going to change anything, but it changes our attitude towards things. We can accept things much more easily if we know it's all happening according to Bhagavan's will for our own good.
And then, so I was thinking of it a little like if you plant an oak tree, only an oak tree will come, even if you pray and pray for some other type of tree, because you've done those actions for an oak tree.
Yes, yes, yes.
But the only part that slightly I wasn't sure about was when you use the word select. It's what's selected for you. I think you almost pulled it out the air.
Yes.
And I wondered why you use that word select.
Because as a general rule, the numbers are just examples, but supposing in one lifetime, we exhaust one lifetime of fruit, we will accumulate maybe 100 lifetimes of fruit. That is, our desires and our efforts are making more fruit than we are exhausting. So the Sanchitra is a huge pile. There's so many. We have been going through the cycle of birth and death for since time immemorial. We can't measure how many. Sometimes they say crores of births. Crores means tens of millions of births. So in those tens of millions of births, we've accumulated so much fruit. So the Sanchitra is a huge pile. So something determines which of those fruit we are to experience in this lifetime. What determines that is God. This is what Bhagavan says in the first verse of Upadeshundiya. Karmam payandaral kartana danayal. Karma giving fruit is by the ordainment of God. That is, which fruit is appropriate for which action, that is determined by God. And which of those fruit we are to experience when is also determined by God. So the fruit we are to experience in this lifetime is selected by God. And he selects those fruit which will be most conducive to our spiritual development.
So from our side, the position of thy will be done, of opening to whatever happens in the dream of life.
Exactly.
And each of us has our own conditioning of what we want to do in life.
Yes.
While we're turning within, there's still the practical life. While turning within, life carries on as normal, as you said. But just keep giving up, just keep surrendering.
Yes, yeah.
And then the whole journey gets much easier.
It makes it so much easier. Not only easier, so much more pleasant. It's so much, if to the extent to which we cease to care about these external things, to that extent, we are free of a burden. This is where this analogy Bhagavan gave of a passenger traveling on the train. Comes in, is so important here. That is, our life is the track on which this train is running. It's all happening by that one Parameshwara Shakti. And this is what Bhagavan says in the 13th paragraph of Nana. When that one Parameshwara Shakti, that is that supreme divine power. Parama means supreme. Ishwara means God or ruling, the ruling power. In other words, the power of God is driving all karyas. That means everything that's meant to happen is being made to happen by God. And everything that we need to do in accordance with that will be made to do. So when he's driving all karyas, why should we, instead of yielding ourselves to it, be constantly thinking it's necessary to do like this, it's necessary to do like that? Then he gives the analogy of a train. When we're traveling on a train, knowing that the train is carrying all the burden, why should we suffer carrying it on our head instead of putting it aside and traveling at ease? So the path of surrender is traveling at ease. It's giving up all cares and concerns, knowing that everything is being taken care of by God.
Thank you once again for your answers. I've always appreciated them.
These aren't my answers. I'm just pointing out what Bhagavan has said. Bhagavan has already answered all these questions, either explicitly or implicitly. All the useful questions we may ask, they've all been answered by Bhagavan in his own original writings. That's why I'm repeatedly quoting Arunachya Stuti Panchakam, Uladu Napadu, Upadesha Undya, Atma-vichara, Nana, because all the answers for any questions we may ask, all the answers are there in these works, either explicitly or implicitly.
But maybe I should rephrase it to thank you for being the channel.
Well, I'm just all I'm doing. Well, it's not even me doing it. Bhagavan doing it through me. Bhagavan is simply pointing out what he's already said.
Thank you, Michael.
Right.
I'll listen back to this.
Right. He pointing out what he's already said, or the implication of what he's already said. Because the important thing to understand about Bhagavan's teachings, if you take any verse, there's the meaning. The meaning is usually quite straightforward. Sometimes it's not so straightforward, but generally the meaning is quite straightforward. But there's a huge amount of implication, and that implication becomes clear to us to the extent to which we put these things into practice.
Okay, so people have suddenly put in another extra question.
Okay.
What do you advise for when awareness is continuously drawn to strong pain and discomfort in the body?
To whom is the pain or discomfort? Naturally, when we're in pain, the mind tends to go towards that. But we need to, whatever may be appearing in our in our mind, in the field of our awareness, we need to turn our attention back to the one to whom it appears. So if we are sincerely following this path, whatever may appear, whether it's pain or pleasure, whether it's something pleasant or something unpleasant, it should all remind us of our own being, because we couldn't be, that is, none of these things could appear if we weren't there for it to appear to. So there couldn't be any pain without an I that to whom that pain appears. So to whom do all these things appear? So we should be constantly trying to turn our attention back to ourselves, away from whatever may appear. That doesn't mean the pain is going to disappear all of a sudden. And of course, if we turn our attention back to ourselves keenly enough, we, the experiencer of the pain, will disappear, and the pain will disappear along with it. But during the course of practice, the pain will still continue. Take the pain as a reminder of I am. This pain is because I am. So hold on, forget the pain and hold on to I am. Forget the pain as much as you can by holding on to I am.
Thank you.
Right. That is the experience of pain is experienced in the form, I am experiencing this. I am experiencing this pain. So leave the pain, leave the experiencing, and hold on to I am. The more we hold on to I am, the less we will be affected by whatever may appear. No matter how painful it may be, if it's our destiny to experience pain, the pain will definitely be there. But we can be indifferent to it to the extent to which we hold on to I am. In other words, to the extent to which we attend to our own being.
Thank you. Yeah.
Right. Bhagavan's teachings are such a beautiful solution to all problems. We just have to apply this solution uh, single-mindedly.
So would you say it's a relaxing?
It's being, attending to our being. Yes, being is the ultimate state of relaxing. That is, to the extent to which we hold on to our being, we cease to be concerned about other things. So relaxing is a byproduct of holding on to our being. All other things can agitate us, but one thing that can never agitate us is our own being. So hold on to our being and thereby let go of all the agitation.
So it's a letting go, really.
It is letting go, but we can let go of other things only by holding on to ourselves. So the key to letting go of everything else is holding on to ourselves. To the extent to which we hold on to ourselves, we let go of everything else.
And self is everything.
So long as we're aware of everything, so long as we're aware of multiplicity, we are that to which everything appears. Hold on to that I, and then everything that I will dissolve, and everything else will dissolve along with it, and then our being alone will remain. Because if we say, it's true in a sense, nothing is other than our being. But if we say everything is our being, okay, everything, then we can have everything. Our aim is, to whom does everything appear? To know the underlying reality of ourself. That is, everything that appears in the view of ourself as ego. So what is the underlying reality of ego? That is our own being. If we hold on to that, ego and everything else will dissolve into that. And yes, that our own being is the reality of everything. But we shouldn't be looking at everything. We should be looking only at our own being.
So it's not a movement away from the pain. It's allowing everything to be as it is, allowing the pain to be as it is.
Yeah, well, in a sense, it's a movement away from pain, in the sense that it's turning our attention back towards ourselves. But turning our attention back towards ourselves is not actually a movement. It's a cessation of movement. Because to the extent to which we attend to ourselves, we thereby subside. And all movement originates from us. That is, the first movement is our rising as ego.
So it's a stopping. Like a more
that is, to the extent to which we attend to ourselves, we as ego thereby subside. And when ego subsides, everything else subsides along with it.
Yeah, thank you. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Right.
There is one last
right.
question that's come up, and then I think this really will be the last one. The question is it harmful for our mind if we are on the path of Advaita and self-inquiry and visit the temple of ISKCON, where they practice only dualistic approach and external rituals and chanting of Mahamantra? They again and again hold on to this to be the only path for Kali Yuga, and they are often also insulting and disrespecting to other spiritual paths. I had such bad experiences with them. Is it better to avoid such groups to keep one's integrity and self-respect? Because some of them strictly reject other sadhakas and their presence and will not even associate with them.
Yes, this is a rather unfortunate thing about ISKCON. That is, ISKCON, they are followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who was an ecstatic devotee, a great devotee of Krishna. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wasn't criticizing others. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for example, when someone wrote a commentary on the Bhagavatam, and brought it to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and wanted his approval. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "You've written this out of egotism. I don't even want to see this." He said, the best commentary is the commentary of Sri Swami. Sri Swami was a Shankaracharya. The earliest commentary on the Bhagavatam was written by Sri Swami, who was a Shankaracharya of the Puri Mat. So he wrote, he's an Advaitin, but because Bhagavatam is primarily a devotional work, he fully brought out the devotion in it, but with the underlying Advaita there. So from that we can infer Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was not averse to Advaita, but in recent generations, but particularly Prabhupada, there's A.C. Bhaktivedanta Prabhupada, and his guru and guru, they are very strongly opposed to Advaita. I think this is because in the 19th century in Calcutta, there were a lot of reform movements, like there was this Brahmo Samaj and everything. A lot of Bengali intellectuals, they found they found meaning in Advaita. They found Advaita answered a lot of the objections, both the objections of the Christian missionaries and the objections of these Brahmo Samajists and everything. So Advaita was very popular in Bengal among intellectuals in the 19th century. This wasn't liked by some followers of the Gaudiya tradition. They felt this Advaita is devoid of bhakti, which is a misunderstanding of Advaita. Advaita, as Bhagavan says, it's parabhakti. It is the supreme devotion, but that is misunderstood, not only by others, even many Advaitins fail to recognize, but bhakti is the very heart of Advaita. So anyway, for some historical reasons, the Prabhupada and his guru's guru had a strong aversion to Advaita for some historical reasons, but they take this far too far. And they not only criticize Advaita, they seem to have a lot of the things that they say are very misogynistic also. They put down women, and they put down anyone. They say devotees of Shiva are materialistic. They had something to say about everyone, some criticism to say, which is unfortunate because that is quite against the spirit of devotion. So unfortunately, I mean, we have to appreciate the bhakti of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, but many of them, particularly the modern ones, have this strong tendency for criticizing others without, not even intelligent criticism. Like they call Advaitins impersonalists. No Advaitin calls themselves an impersonal. It's a misrepresentation. If you disagree with someone's views, you should, and if you want to say why you disagree with them, you should take their views seriously. Try to understand what they're saying, and not just put labels on them that don't apply. So this is the unfortunate thing. I mean, we have to appreciate the devotion, but this strong tendency in ISKCON to criticize others is detracting from the bhakti. A true devotee will see God in all. That is not only these. Because of this strong tendency for criticizing, they even criticize among themselves. I seen something where some ISKCON people are criticizing some Krishna Bhakta because he ran eye camps in the Vrindavan area. Eye camps means poor people can't afford to have eye operations. So people run eye camps where they bring surgeons to do basic eye surgery like cataract operations and other operations that can help people's sight. So one devotee, I can't remember his name, but he was running eye camps, and he was saying, we see Krishna in all the people who come here. So we are serving Krishna in this form. I read something where some ISKCON people were saying, you cannot compare Krishna with these ignorant villagers. So this is totally inappropriate. That's the correct attitude. If you're doing any seva, any service to people, you should do it in the spirit that you're doing service to God. As Bhagavan says in verse 5 of Upadesha Undiyar, Ennuru yavam ireuru amena eni vari padalundi para isan nalpusane undi para. Worshipping all the 8 forms, worshipping, considering all the 8 forms to be forms of God, is good worship of God. All the 8 forms means the 5 elements, the sun, moon, and jivas. So in other words, everything is a form of God. That is the attitude with which, if you're going to do service, that is the attitude with which service should be done. But so as I say, even some ISKCON people criticize other Krishna bhaktas simply for saying that they're doing service, considering that they're doing service to Krishna. So this is the trouble. When you begin to criticize others, you will criticize everyone. You end up criticizing everyone except yourself. That is egotism. If we look down on everyone else, that is pure egotism. So I don't like to criticize, but this is a very unfortunate thing about ISKCON. And many people have this experience. They're attracted to ISKCON because it's the beautiful devotion. But this devotion is polluted by this constant criticism of others, which is the very antithesis of devotion. If you're a devotee, you should see yourself as lower than everyone. You shouldn't consider yourself as superior to anyone. A true devotee feels himself to be lower than the lowest. Bhagavan has said why God is supreme, why God is worthy to be worshipped by all the worlds, because he sees himself as lower than the lowest. So the true Sadhu Om often used to say, humility is divinity. To the extent to which ego subsides, that is true divinity. So if the spiritual path is all about subsidence of ego, criticizing others is about boosting ego. Because if you criticize someone, the implicit in any criticism, you are taking yourself to be superior. So this is unfortunate. If you can go to ISKCON and just for the worship, that's fine. But if you find it's uncomfortable, if you're uncomfortable with this constant criticism, then maybe it's better to keep away from that. And I'm not, they're very good people. I've got many friends who are devotees of, who are followers of ISKCON, but so it's not everyone who has that who critical, but it's a strong tendency there. Even Prabhupada, A.C. Bhaktivedanta, he's constantly critical of particularly Advaitins, but also others. I mean, even women he puts down, and it's just unfortunate because it's the beautiful bhakti gets spoiled by this. That is, what is the one thing that pollutes bhakti? That is ego. So true bhakti is the subsidence of ego.
Well, thank you very much, Michael.
Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Arunachala Ramanaya.
And we'll close with Bhagavan's mantra. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.